So, effective ways to be fair with your kids. Hi, I'm Claire from the Yanowitz law firm, where we've been helping families with wills, trusts, and probate for over 29 years. Okay, let's get started. So, I get questions a lot from clients, or I know that there's a lot of anxiety around, when I die, I want to make sure my family gets along. I want them to spend Christmases together. I want them to spend holidays together. I want them to know each other and be friends. And so I want to make sure that my estate is set up to promote family harmony. So here's a couple of things you can do to do that. Sometimes we have families who have either lots of kids or there's a large age gap between their children. Maybe they have a 22-year-old and a 5-year-old. And for families like that, sometimes we'll set up what's called a pot trust. The reason behind this is that in those scenarios, the 22-year-old has had mom and dad pay for a lot of things already. They've had soccer lessons, they've had music lessons, they've had sleepaway camp, they've had college. The 5-year-old hasn't had all of those expenses yet, and there's going to still be a lot of money to raise that 5-year-old. So what we do is we set it in a pot trust where it's just one container for all the money until the youngest child reaches the age of 22 or 25, or they graduate from college, whichever event comes first. So that's oftentimes how our pot trusts are set up. So the idea is that maybe the 5-year-old is going to get more distributions, more things paid for until they're a grown adult. And then at that point, the trust is going to divide into 2 separate shares, or however many shares there are kids, and they each get their own pot of money and are able to decide how they want to spend it thereafter. Another thing that sometimes families have is they're concerned about, college costs so much money, and they've had one child that they have paid for college for, or maybe they've allocated $100,000 to pay for that child's college. And then they have another child who hasn't even gone to college yet. And they want to make sure that they're being equitable about paying for college. So in that scenario, we can create a contingent gift where I will pay $100,000 towards Laura's college if she's under the age of 25 and has not gone to college yet. And then for every year that she's completed with college, I'm going to decrease that gift by $25,000. So this contingency where you're giving that child who hasn't attended college an extra bump of money that decreases as the child goes through school. And oftentimes we'll cut this off at a certain age. So, if a child doesn't decide to go to school, it's not like they can get an extra infusion of cash at the age of 45. They have to be under a certain age to get this extra bump in money. Oftentimes, parents help kids through major life events, like maybe a kid gets divorced and you help buy a house for them, or maybe a child had some family illness and you help them with some medical bills for a while, or were let go from their house or their house burnt down. There's all sorts of things that happen, and mom and dad step in and they make a gift to that child who's had an unfortunate series of events. They make a gift or they make a loan, is what I see. And the question is should that child who's had that extra help get less at death? Some people would say yes, they got some of their inheritance up front, they should get less at death. Other people would say no, this thing was out of their control. They don't need to get less at death. They can't help that their house burnt down. We just help them out just like any family member would help each other out in hard times. Now, if mom and dad own the child money, they loan them, the child, when they die, will have to pay back that loan, and that will decrease the share of the estate that they need to get at death. So if the parent did not want to decrease that child's share, they need to make sure there's a clause in their will or trust that releases that loan so that it's forgiven. It's also really important that that loan is in writing, that it charges the minimum AFR interest rate, and that the parent keeps track of all the payments the child makes on that loan. So there isn't a dispute at the time of the parent's death on how much did that child really owe mom, okay? Because these are things that siblings can easily fight about. Sometimes we have a child who is acting as trustee, whereas the other children aren't acting in that role. And the parents want to compensate that child a bit extra money to do that because it's a real job. And they feel like if they don't give that child an extra bump in money, we're going to give them $10,000, the child will not feel comfortable charging for their time. The siblings might dispute it. So sometimes parents will take matters into their own action and give that child an extra dollar amount at the time of their death. Sometimes the child has been a lot more involved in helping mom and dad. Maybe they built an addition onto their home, brought them to a lot of medical appointments. And in that circumstance, mom and dad might give that child extra money as well. Sometimes a certain child takes an animal, and maybe that animal, has diabetes and it needs shots 3 times a day and all sorts of medical bills. Sometimes people will give that child an extra dollar amount, both to defray the medical costs associated with taking that animal, and second, to just thank them for taking care of the pet. So those are all different considerations to think about when you're giving assets to your children. In my next video, I'm going to talk about how to be fair with blended families, which is a really hot topic. So stay tuned to hear more about that. And if you want to learn more about estate planning, hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can learn more about estate planning and be alerted to when we put new videos on our channel. Thanks so much.